So the question that we're going to be talking about today is how systemic racism is within the BIPOC community and how it affects our mental health.
Yeah, for sure. When I think about that question, I think about police violence, and I think this just goes back to me when I was younger and always talking to my parents, and they'll all be like, when I was younger, like, Andrew, before you leave the house, like, take off your hoodie, take off a do-rag, right? And things like that, they actually stick with you. I mean, I'm 32 years old now, right? They stick with you all the way because it's stuff like, you're always in the back of your mind thinking of a negative situation that can occur to you the second that you leave the house, right? So, like my dad told me when I got my first car, he's like, you're a black man, you got a nice Honda Civic, it's a black two-door coupe, it's tinted windows. If a cop pulls you over, what are you gonna say? You gotta say, yes, Mr. Officer, no, Mrs. Officer. You gotta know all your scenarios. You gotta play them out before you actually leave the house, because if that scenario does happen, there's only two ways this outcome can occur, right? You survive or you don't survive, right? So, so that's kind of how I see it, and I think about myself in scenarios where I've been in, and fortunately enough, having that training before I left the house actually allowed me to be comfortable when talking to police officers on certain things. And when I say comfortable, I say that lightly. It's prepared.
Yeah.
Right. So.
No, I like what you said, because for me it's definitely in regards to stereotypes. When you talk about I like the direct stuff and all that kind of all that stuff. I'm a freelancer, so I have to go to the bank, actually cash my checks and stuff like that. And it was very recently. I did it on my day off. So I was wearing my casual clothes, I have my sweatpants, my hoodie, my durag, whatever. Then I got to the bank with all these checks and I was like, it might be better if I go back home and change. You know what I mean? Like, it stays in the back of your mind because you know what you look like at that moment. And they're looking at you like, how'd you get all these checks? What do you do for a living?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When it's a transaction that I had done, it's been 6 years or whatever, but I always come back from work, so I look a certain way, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So it's true that a lot of these, I think it's the stereotypes. I think a lot of these stereotypes follow us, like, whether we want to or not. Especially in the educational system, you're in high school, they'll tell you, okay, here are your options, career path-wise, and all that kind of stuff. And they'll keep it very limited to where they think you fit. When in reality, like I said, when I was in high school, no one told me about journalism. I found that out on my own, in my mid-20s, you know what I mean? And it wasn't even a career path that was suggested, but they told me all the stereotypical, the sports thing, and then the lawyer thing and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? That you either do this or you do that. Like, as a black man, you don't have all these options, you know what I mean? When in reality, what if I wanted to be a scientist? What if I wanted to be a newscaster? What if I wanted to, own a business, all that kind of stuff? They don't even educate you on these opportunities. You have to go in the real world, go find them on your own, and hopefully you meet like a brother or sister that's actually educated enough to tell you you can do that instead. So I would say, yeah, definitely stereotypes are some of the ones that come to mind.
And here are parents being like, you have to be like an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, and then as your example, you're saying, our teachers are limiting us. And then this is where I think there's a hierarchy almost of human value, where it's a top, bottom approach. And I think an example of that is recently or last year, Jagmeet Singh, he came out in Parliament and he called out a Bloc member of Parliament, and he, told him that he was a racist. And he got kicked out of the chamber. And so when we look at this, we look at our leaders and the leaders that are fighting for, ending systemic racism and who are trying to talk about racism, they're getting booted out of the chamber. So then what do we look at? How can we count on the people that are running our country, but yet we're being questioned and they're being silenced?
Yes, an interesting dynamic that you brought up. Like the fact that it's a them if you do, them if you don't type of thing, you know what I mean? When the people in these positions, when they actually want to talk about it, they're being silenced. And then when they don't, you know what happens? It's there's also the whole concept of, please protest peacefully. And like you do it and they kill you, and you get mad, and they're like, why don't you just protest peacefully? You're like, you just shot my brother. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how do you? Sorry, it's like how. It's like you can't win. You know what I mean? But anyway,
I think it's just to touch a bit like this idea of stereotype and racism and all this, like the example that you show around the chamber and all that. It's weird because when we all speak about like the racism up there, people swear they're not racist. Like it's almost like it's not supposed to be so uncomfortable to have a normal conversation about like how to prevent racism and just having like a very open conversation about racism and all that. Like the Black Lives Matter movement, I remember like me, I had to go back to work and all this, and it's just like they had no knowledge of me as a Black woman going into a setting that I'm the only Black person there. I mean, I work in a government, so there's many minorities there, so I'm not saying that I'm the only person, but in where I was working in my personal department, not department, but yeah, my group, that was it. Like, I just feel like, and whenever you want to speak upon it, like you talk about like what's going on into the news, it's always very easy, like, like what's next on the agenda? And it's almost like, why is it so hard? And when we literally say this is racist, we get kicked out, like, we're not racist there, calm down. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I had an experience like that at my employer as well. It's disheartening, you know, because at the end of the day, I was the only person of color on the team. And, you know, you bring these topics forward and, you know, it's easy to plead ignorance, but I always tell people nobody in our demographic or in my workplace doesn't have a smartphone, right? Like, a lot of these things are researchable topics that you can educate yourself on and self-educate yourself on. And it's almost as if people of color are looked to have an obligation to educate the community on these issues and topics where you're never really going to get, you know, the message conveyed properly.
Yeah.
And then to your point where they say, oh, I'm not a racist or blah, 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 it's not important to them, even though you're a part of the team, so it should be important to everybody to understand, right? But, you know, they use their so-called friend, Black friend or BIPOC friend, as a way to validate them not being racist. Right?
Yeah,
True.
I'm not racist, I have a Black friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
right?
like,
My neighbor's cousin's cat's owner is Black.
and then you know the thing too, like they always sent like, I remember around that time they just sent like a quick email to everyone, right? Just to be like, awareness everyone, like we care. And then 2022 now, like I don't hear you guys, like what's going on? And the problem is still happening. Like we just constantly see in the news everything that's happening, and like it's just nothing is changing for us into our lives, but for them it's just they're moving forward.
I think it's also changing in the wrong way, in the sense that, you know, even today, like I was on a meeting, in a work meeting, and we were talking about diversity and inclusion, and I was the only brown, you know, person of color in that meeting where everyone else was white, and they didn't know what to say. And I think that comes like from the hierarchical approach that I was talking about, where they're hiring people of color now, but they're doing it for all the wrong reasons. They're just trying to fill in the gaps.
A quota,
The gaps, and the people that are doing it are the people that are, you know, the white Western people at the top that are making these decisions to just fill in the gaps of adding, you know, this Black person or this brown person or this Asian person into the little slots. And that's like, we're qualified, we're able, we're capable, we're smart, we're educated, and we do fit these higher roles, but we're not.
Yo, that reminds me of like that meme. I don't know if you probably seen it. It's like the corporate structure, and when they're like, this is what they mean by diversity, and you have like, you know, all different type of people, like, you know, women, you have Black people, Black women, or like people from different, you know, roots at the bottom. Then you go one level over, and it's like, okay, now you have like, you know, two people that are, you know, BIPOC, and then you have like all these white people, and the more you go up, it's like just white people, and down the top you have like that one white man. It's like, it's like no matter what, and they're like, yeah, you know, diversity, and it's like, well, the diversity is very superficial. You know what I mean?
They're the ones that are making this decision about it, and
Yeah.
they don't. And then they come to you. They come to you as like the coordinators, the employers, the advisors, or whatever, and they're like, "Hey, like, what should we do for Black History Month?" And it's unfair is not the right word here, but yeah, like it's unfair.
I call it exhausting.
Exhausting. That's
Exhausting is definitely the word that comes in mind. Like me, it's exhaustion.
Yeah.
Like it's literally like, are you okay? Like you just almost like they're walking like a tippy toe, and then they're like, can we ask you just a question? Don't be mad or offended, huh? Like,
Yeah.
and then it's like right there, just right there, I'm already offended.
Yeah.
And your exhaustion plays such a huge role into your mental health. So, you know, like, how are you feeling mentally, and what are your employers doing, or what is society doing, or what are people doing to talk about this? Because I think, you know, with everything that's going on right now, that conversation is still lacking, even though we are making a lot of progress around mental health.
Yeah.
But I think within our communities, it's taking a little bit longer because we've never ever been given those resources, and it's only now that we're starting to talk about it.
That's it.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, the topic of EDI, it's a hot topic right now, and like you said, I think this is going to be a trend as well too, right? So they're finding ways to meet the quota, whether it's the right way or wrong way. But it's almost as if, like, I always look for, when I get a new job and I go to the office or whatever, the first thing I do is I look for people like myself, right?
Yeah.
I
Of course.
always try to
Yeah.
find somebody that looks
Oh,
like
yeah.
myself, or somebody that can relate to, like, any sort of cultural story, because
Yeah.
cultures are all different, but, you know, immigrant parents are immigrant parents, and the upbringing is pretty similar, right? Like, we could all relate to, like, a similar story, or whether it's, you know, the diversity, even something simple as, you know what, it's crazy to think, it's what can I bring to work today to eat for lunch that I don't have to worry about maybe it's smelling in the kitchen.
That's
Right?
a
Like,
thing.
That's the thing that we
Yeah.
relate to. You know what I
You
mean?
know what I
That's
mean?
the thing.
Right?
You have that one white kid named Tommy looking over like, what's that smell?
You cover up your lunch.
And you cover up your lunch and you're like, damn it, man.
You cover up your lunch and you never bring it back. Right?
And what's annoying is like, you know that these people went on in their lives and not caring about what they did. You know? And that's systemic racism right there.
And you just can't eat after that.
No!
You spend a whole day, and then you come back with your lunch back home, and then your mom's like, why did you eat?
Yeah.
It's like, yo, because I can't open my lunch box.
Yeah. And you're like, I can never ever bring cultural food to work, because at the end of the day,
Me, I got to a point where I don't care anymore. Like, cause
But that's the
where
thing.
I'm at in life in terms of like my confidence. Like, it's different when you're looking for yourself, you're looking for validation, whatever, at a younger age.
Yeah.
Now I don't care. I be pulling up to places and I'm like, yo, this is called du riz légumes and it smells like this. You know what I mean? This right here, like you know what you're smelling. That's that spice, that's that pickles, that's whatever. It smells like that. I don't care.
But is that not because of the conversations that we're having
100%,
now?
100%.
So when we were younger, we weren't having these conversations. We were
Yeah.
just trying to fit in. I was just trying to fit in. The amount of times that I would throw out my lunch,
Yep.
just so I didn't have to bring it home, so mom wouldn't get mad at me.
Yep.
But because I didn't want to eat it in front of my friends, because they'd be like, "What is that? That's not like a regular peanut butter and jelly sandwich." Like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
So it's because we're having these conversations, and more information is becoming available, you know, to feel
You're
more
right.
comfortable about
Yeah.
it,
You're
right?
right. You're right.
do you think it's these conversations though? Because I think it's more or less like we just don't care anymore. right?
maturity,
I think-
like, we're
I think
getting
part
older,
of it is
for
we
sure.
don't care.
I agree
Well,
with that.
the more you get to know yourself, the more you
That's
don't
what I
care
mean.
what people think of you. So
That's
it's
right.
like, but that comes with age and maturity. And,
Yeah.
and it takes in finding that. It takes a while. Like, there's a lot of factors that can. Some people get to like 40, 50 years old, they never develop that.
That's true.
Because of these traumas or whatever. Like, they never get over it. You know, we have these conversations. Some people don't even know how to get in the room where these conversations are even available. You know
That's
what I
true.
mean? So I don't know if it's
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
You're becoming vulnerable.
Yeah.
You're allowing yourself to be put in situations where you can then decide how you want to feel about it without somebody telling you how to feel about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that start at a pretty young age. It's crazy because like I migrated in Canada like when I was like 6, you know? And then I still remember like our culture of food, like in Haiti, like when you send your kid to school with like regular food, right? like home food that it smells. You know, it has its own cultural smell to it.
But regular
last night's
food,
dinner.
exactly what you said, regular food. It's not like this abnormal dish that you're eating. It's your food.
And literally,
Yeah, it's literally what I need to eat to survive.
Yeah.
Why you, what's the,
Who's to say a burger is regular food, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
anyways, go on, sorry.
but no, it's okay. But like, I just remember like it was yesterday. Like it was like I went to a summer camp, and the lady, they didn't have microwave or something like that at that time. Well, that place, and then they literally had to tell my mom that's a migrant. But like, hey, by the way, this type of food actually smell, a bit.
No.
And we don't have microwaves, so please just send it home with a sandwich, because. And in my head, I'm like, my culture is just.
Yeah.
We like rice, we like beans. Like this
Yeah,
thing about
all that
asking my mom to
stuff.
do sandwich just because it doesn't smell like it's just.
Yeah.
yeah.
But when you just want to be part of a culture and you just migrate in Canada, you just basically you feel like you just don't know what best for your children.
Yeah.
So I remember my mom was just like doing sandwich, and then eventually she just ended up buying those hot dinner. I don't know if you guys end up having
yeah,
this.
yeah,
like, yeah. And then that basically was it. But until now, into my professional life and I work, I still remember like, oh shit, like this. Oh, sorry, my language. But I'm like, oh damn, like the food gonna smell a bit. And
Yeah. Me, I
It's
bombard
just-
that thing. Yeah, I bombard the whole place, yo. I pull up. I don't care, man. This is poisson macro. This is macro. This is like it's like red fish, and I'm microwaving that. You know what I mean? And I'm microwaving the sauce that I'm putting on that, and I'm putting it on the table like, what's up? You know? But that obviously, like you said, is conversation. It's based on all these things. You know what's crazy is the fact that what's considered like regular food, let's all agree among each other that it's what's considered regular food is food that tastes like nothing. Let's give it a buck. You know what I mean? Like it's like the reason why some people's food don't smell like nothing is because it doesn't taste like nothing. You know? That's just my 2 cents in regards to a couple of things. If
now you're having to
you know what I'm saying? I'm like thinking how it is. Thinking how it is. You know, if you heard what I said, you heard what I said. You know, it's you. That's what I'm saying.
There's more than just salt and pepper, right? So,
yeah. But this is the other thing too. Like we live in Canada, we can all agree that Canada is like it's well known for diversity and being multicultural and all that. But I do feel like in elementary school they still not doing a great job at giving that diversity. Like at literally like you said, it's maturity that makes us comfortable to be able to eat our food. It comes with age.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be at a young age. I don't even think they even have the conversation about racism because it's something that those teachers in elementary school, I don't even think they're prepared to explain to a young kid what is actually happening.
Yeah, but if you look at the color of the educators, 99% of them are not BIPOC community, right? So I mean,
That's it.
you can't really get that education if they're not a part of the culture, right? So, and I think a part of it when I look at the school system too is simplicity, right? They don't want to have those conversations. They don't want to, at the start of the year, they always say like, these are things that you need to buy and these are things that you need to bring for, and this is the lunch that you bring, like no nuts, blah, 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 right? I understand some of it's for allergies and stuff like that, but they do that in a way to undermine stuff like this, like bringing in your own culture, right? Because it's simplicity for them, right? They've already made the rules before they even thought about who's in their class, right? Because you can have a class that's very diverse, or you can have a class that's not. But I guarantee you, if that educator was probably of a diverse background, they would be okay with somebody bringing in that type of food, let's just say, into their classroom, right? Because that is regular food for us, right?
Yeah.
So, like,
I think that's what I struggle with too, though, is yes, like we're talking about food and our culture and things like that, and I think our education system is slowly changing, but what are we learning in history? And are we still learning, we're learning about things that, just are not what the true facts of history are.
Yep.
And so
I agree.
I think that's a huge thing where we're talking about ourselves and we're like, hey, we don't care what we're eating in front of, who we're eating in front of, but like those kids are not being educated properly about, the true facts of what happened in history. A lot's coming out in the light of what's, has happened in the past. So I think that's something that is you know, regardless of if it's a class full of, you know, BIPOC children or all white kids, like everyone needs to learn the true facts of what actually happened in history and colonizing and, you know, indigenous people and land and how, you know, just everything, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot came out with the Black Lives Matters and, you know, slavery and things like that. So there's just so much within history that was missed because of how and who taught it. And that goes, again, back to my hierarchical approach where these people are making the decisions as to what we're learning, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're thinking, what we're doing. And this is what we have to do is now become vulnerable and get outside of our, you know, cycles, our toxic cycles, our generational cycles, our school systems, our governments, and all of that stuff, and change the way that we see and do things. And we're doing that, but we're slowly doing that because we're limited and we're scared, and this is where vulnerability really needs to come into play.
Right.
And we're here and we're connected. Look at all of us. We all have not similar stories, but we can relate. And this is where our connection comes. And we need to keep building that connection within our communities to continue that conversation.
For sure.
Already check out the Blacklands on Instagram. If you want to learn more about real history, you know I got you. No, because what you said is very important, especially like, you know, like I was telling you, like.
No,
I had to. If you wanna, no, it's important because that point right there is important. Like some people don't even know, like, you know, especially for Black people, a lot of time they like to act like our history starts with slavery, decolonization, and the civil rights movement. Not understanding that we have history that comes from way before that. Some people don't know who Mansa Musa is, you know what I mean? Some people don't know about like who the Dogons are. They know about, you know, Galileo and all that kind of stuff, but they don't know about, you know, the Dogons who actually drew the whole solar system all the way to Pluto just by looking at the stars via their eyes, you know? And we still have like proof of their existence still. They're still around, you know what I mean? Some people have no idea. They're like, they're stuck in that mentality, you know, because of the history that's been taught is, again, whatever they want to teach you. You know, like I remember in high school having to do like, you know, essays about like some of Napoleon's greatest act. I'm Haitian. For us, Napoleon is like Hitler. You know what I mean? Like this guy is the biggest pile of garbage of history for us. You know what I mean? So, but you go to school here and they're like, let's talk about this hero called Napoleon, and now, you know, imagine you're native and then, you know, and they're telling you about Christopher Columbus and it's like, yo, just write like 3 great things that he did. You don't want to do that, man. That's the person who's responsible for the genocide of your own people. You know.
But you know, the thing is, I like you saying this, but it's because that we're older and we learned that. But when we were kids, like I was learning this, like this was the truth.
Yeah, Napoleon was a great guy.
And you know what? And I think that there was a book, like you guys probably, and I forgot the name of the book. It's White Fragility.
Okay.
And it's basically like there's this concept, this idea that sometimes they just can't just admit. Like I feel like it's gonna be hard just for the school system to literally open their entire history book and be like, ooh, we left a lot of things. Like when they talk about indigenous, about taking Canada, the land, whatever land, in their head is a fair trade.
That's right.
And I'm like, there's no place in history it's a fair trade, but they really believe it. Like they believe it in their soul. Like we learn about it. This is what they're proud of. All the school in French, like all the French school like that I know of, they're all named after like some explorateur, La Vérendrye, Samuel Genet, all those people that basically affected many people's lives.
And we celebrate them as heroes.
Exactly.
You want to mention that, they're like, don't try to mess with history. It's like, what do you mean? History is messing with me. You know? Like, I'm just, you know, retaliating. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you
and
see.
history's coming to light now, too, with everything that's being.
Yeah, you see the statues are getting torn down and stuff like that, too. And obviously, there's a big important, I see what they're saying, like, don't erase history, because you still need to know it, because if we know that history, it actually gives us the ammunition to show them, like, well, no, in order. The reason why you guys are praising these guys is because this is a story that you were told, but that's not the accurate story. Like, let me show you how this came to be, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the story of the BIPOC community. You know, like you talk about like a lot of these businesses that you see today, a lot of them were built by BIPOC communities.
Yeah.
During slavery time and such, right? Our colonizers came in and monopolized on it, right? And that's why we as people are so far behind. Right, and it's not something that we in our lifetime will reap the benefits from having these conversations, but we have to rebuild and kind of get ourselves up to that level. But once again, the more we build, the more they're building as well too, right?
100%.
So we're actually always going to be behind, but we're trying to do better for ourselves, right? So it's one of those scenarios where you just look at, like we're talking about the wealth gap in BIPOC communities, right? It's pretty evident as to why we're so far behind. You know, you look at the Indian Act for the Aboriginal and Indigenous people, where literally anybody who was a professional, had a professional designation, had to either give it up to stay on the reserve or leave.
Yeah.
And when they left, they left all their identity behind. Therefore, you know, you're just restarting. Everybody who's on the reserves, they had to restart because they don't have that mentor to look up to kind of take the next step forward, right? Like, they're always restarting from fresh, right? So
I want to respectfully disagree with one thing you said.
Sure.
It's in regards to us staying behind. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
What I've come to understand is that, I know with people watching this on YouTube, whatever, we're in Canada, you know, and as a second generation immigrant here, like, I've come to understand the fact that this is, as much as I'm born here, there's a part of this country that's never going to be mine, you know?
Yeah.
And I've learned to come to terms with that, no matter how much I'm trying to assimilate all that kind of stuff. I don't think we're going to be stuck, but I think there's ways for us to not always be behind if we go rebuild, like, if we take the resources that we have and we go rebuild them elsewhere.
But the thing is, by building elsewhere, we're now becoming immigrant into elsewhere. Elsewhere is where exactly?
No, I'm not talking about us moving necessarily. You know what I mean? I'm talking about like us like uniting with each other and sort of like building something that we're all gonna be able to benefit from, no matter where you are in the world. You know what I mean? Like if you have businesses that are like, you know, supported internationally, like, you know, across Africa and the Caribbean and all that kind of stuff, and you know, like something that we, again, I'm very, like, you know, I'm freestyling some stuff like off the top of my head, but if we do come up with like ways to you know, create infrastructure that we can, for example, one of the things is like encouraging people to go visit like Africa, to go visit the roots and whatnot, you know what I mean? That right here, you can already heal this gap in education and understanding if people start connecting back to their roots and stuff like that. Because, you know, white people, they got Julius Caesar, they got whatever happened in Europe, whatever. But a lot of black people, again, we don't have that. You know what I mean? So I'm talking about the gap in education, the gap in spirit, the spiritual gap, the educational gap, the social ones, and all that kind of stuff. You know, economically, it is what it is. The world is an economy now. But I'm talking all these other aspects. If we do, my opinion is that if we do, those things can be addressed if we do build with each other. You know what I mean?
I agree. I agree with both parties, but also, like, here's the thing that with what you just said right now. There's a lot of BIPOC and individual that don't know their background, or their family has been in Canada, or they could be even Afro-Canadian. They've been like Nova Scotia, and they've been there like basically since the slave trade, you know. And the gaps that you're referring to is like, let's say like a visit in Africa. I think this is, any black person should want to do a visit in Africa, just to know and learn about the history, the black history and anything like that. But I don't think this is what, sorry, I feel like in like the BIPOC community, and I'm just going to talk just about like Caribbean specifically, we have this complexity side that a lot of the time we kind of have like a double consciousness, that we act a lot, and sometimes we do want to act a lot like as the European side, and we want to disconnect ourselves as our motherland, which is Africa. We all know that the slavery had happened, but it is a part of any time that we have someone that's proud African that's now talking to a Caribbean literally gonna be like, hey, stop right now. I am not African. Yeah. And this is where that even when within the black community, and again, this is not saying that Again, this is not saying that we are the problem, but it's just to say that it's hard. It's hard that we've been so long brainwashing and been feeding all those false reality, those lies, that even within ourselves, we can't even know what is true, what is not true. So when people is like, let's take a trip to our motherland, people are literally like, motherland, I'm not African, just because they have the stereotype and what we have learned from Europeans based on story that Africa is poor and all this. It's just me, the way that I say, like the way that I see it, and this is kind of where I agree with you, is we are somehow, I can't say we're always going to be behind, because we have seen like Obama, we have seen great black leader literally just went there. You know what I mean? Like they were able to work really hard and get there. However, it's just gonna be a longer process for us, because when a black get rich, the white people get more rich.
That's what I mean. Right, so that's what I meant when you're always behind. It's like we're not going to be poor. Is not what I'm saying. I'm saying we're going to be financially fine. It's just the wealth gap is so wide already, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about like Obama came in and did some stuff, but like look how fast they reversed what Obama did by putting in Trump.
Yeah.
You see how fast like America went backwards.
But
right?
and also when Obama came in, they also was like, he's mixed. They start talking about the fact that he's mixed because somehow his whiteness had something to do with the success. It's almost like they had to justify something.
Look how long it took him to get there, what Andrew is saying, and then everything in reverse. And then we just celebrated the 1 year anniversary of when the Trump supporters came onto Capitol Hill and literally destroyed the whole place. If Obama was in
literally some people are celebrating that.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong word. I wouldn't say we celebrated. I would say we recognize what happened last year, because that's not it's not a celebration for a lot of people. I know what you meant, but like some people literally were celebrating that, right? I mean, it's life is a funny thing, especially when it comes to race, and we don't get, as a BIPOC community, we don't get the amount of chances as
we don't get chances.
Right?
Like you look at Trump, he did what he did.
Yeah.
Because he knows he has chances. We don't have those chances where, if we take a wrong turn or if we say the wrong thing, how quickly it's going to come back and bite us in the butt, and the backlash that's going to come with it. And then that's where I really want to tie in mental health, where we are going through these daily obstacles, these daily struggles. We see our brothers, we see our sisters, we see our family, we see our community, we see all our BIPOC family going through these struggles, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Like you said, like we're tired, but it's never gonna, is it ever gonna end?
Yeah.
Are we gonna have to keep, fighting and struggling and like Andrew mentioned, like we're always gonna be kind of like that one step behind. So, I mean, when is it ever gonna, be equal, and will it ever be equal?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
I guess it's $1 million question.
That's kind of.
It won't be in our lifetime, I can tell you that much.
I mean, the world might be coming to an end, but
slavery been abolished for the longest time, and sorry, not the longest time, but it's kind of like why it's still surprising that like we are still today, 2022, still having the same conversation.
But don't forget, equity and equality are two very different things, right? And I think, I think a lot of people confuse it too, and on the outside of the BIPOC community, of course, right? So like they look at things like, oh well, you guys can vote now. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Yeah, you're right. We can vote now. Congratulations. Like, oh, you guys have access to these things. I'm like, well, we're humans. We should have access to all the things, the same things that you have as well, right? But I don't know. I don't think, in my personal opinion, like we're going to reap the benefits. I think it's going to be us to build it up for the generations to come.
All the trials that like have been happening, and obviously it's great to see that justice is being served, but that's only now in our generation that justice is slowly starting to be served. And when these cases came out and they were winning with like people being put into jail that deserve to be put into jail. I look at my black friends and I'm like, oh, this is like great. Like, they're going to jail, but no one's excited. None of my black friends are excited. They're like, obviously we're taking the steps, but like that, as one person's going to jail, another police officer is killing another black girl. Like, and so.
Like 1 step forward, 10 step back all the time. And that's what kills your mental health.
Yeah, and I don't think that I don't think they can relate to. No. I feel like all the conversation we have, it's a great step for them to, try to have a bit of empathy, But I just feel like they will actually never understand. They grew up all their life with a certain privilege that create mental health better. That's right. And us, if me as second immigrant in Canada, I understand what it's like to have a mother that probably the language is a barrier as well. And I understand as monoparental is a thing. All those things are constantly affecting just our community, and our parents have to do certain type of job that are on the front line, that when they go to work, they come back and they're not there necessarily to, I feel like in my wife friends, like they have plenty of time to have certain conversation and how are you doing in school and all this. And I feel like when I think about like my mom, she come back work stress, it's stress.
Yeah, but we don't even talk about it. Like when it comes to mental health, like you stay oppressed. Like we don't talk about our emotions. We don't talk about what's going on. We don't talk about like how we're feeling. And that's also like a privilege where we were never privileged to be able to have resources and talk about mental health. And like statistically speaking with research, even when people of color do get mental health resources and talk to professionals, they're not getting the same type of mental health support as a white person will. And, even for myself, talking about mental health and going into the field, like I started my master's and I'm doing my master's in counseling psychology, and even that is a huge thing because this is me breaking generational toxic cycles and talking about mental health. And it's hard when you're fighting against 2 grains of, mental health and trying to fit in within society.
Yeah, and I think we're doing some progress. I mean, sometimes I look at what we're doing online. In terms of our individual ailings, when it comes to these things, now more people are aware of terms like trauma. You know what I mean? Childhood trauma, gaslighting, narcissism, all that kind of stuff. People know what these things are. You know what I mean? So you don't sound as we're not as uneducated when it comes to certain things, certain dynamics. We can recognize certain things. You know what I mean? Like racial gaslighting is another thing. You know what I mean? We know what just psychologically we're a little bit more aware. You know what I mean? And when we add 2 and 2 and what our parents went through, and like them being stressed coming back from work, not knowing how to channel it, and not being able to have conversations with us about day-to-day stuff or whatever, you realize it. We're like, okay, it makes sense. You know what I mean? And by doing that, we're able to heal ourselves. By healing ourselves, we heal them. By healing them, we heal the people that come after us. And and obviously we create a better cycle.
Mental health is still a very new term in general. I think probably not a new term, but just speaking out about it is very new for a lot of people. And I think once again, I'll go back to the wealth gap. I think BIPOC mental health is a different beast than traditional mental health, right? Yeah. And traditional mental health, they've had the financial backers to get these platforms off the ground to offer these support. As a person of color, you can't go to a traditional psychologist or psychiatrist and talk to them about BIPOC mental health. They don't understand.
They don't.
Right? So they can't fix a problem that they don't understand. And sometimes it may not even be a problem. It's just literally or the problem could be solved by just understanding. But if you're talking to somebody that can't understand what you're going through or your background, or even something as simple as I wouldn't say slavery and what happened during slavery times is being passed down generation over generation, like some of our traumas.
Yeah.
If you can't understand that, how can you really be an assistance to us, right? So that's what I'm talking about, especially when it comes to wealth gap. Like now, if us as BIPOC community, we had a lot of money and we put out a lot of resources and funding into creating something for BIPOC community, we'd probably see a greater change than what we're seeing right now.
100%.
Right?
Hey, 100%. Well, I feel like we could go on and on and on about like mental health and all that and we relate every day. I know I relate to it.
Yeah.
But no, it was a great conversation, and I really hope that everyone that's watching, I don't know which camera.
We know there's 3 of them.
I hope that everyone that's watching, there's just patience
continues having the conversation about mental health, and I'm really happy that I connected with you, so thank you for connecting all of us, and you're setting up a great resource for the BIPOC community to be able to have these conversations and talk about mental health within our community and more than just that. So thank you for having us.
We appreciate you.
And anybody out there, you can follow me on Instagram at Latty, Latty. Andrew, no, this is serious because I do mental health with athletes and stuff like that. And, feel free to reach out to me and talk. I'm always there. You can send me a message. You can follow me on Instagram. My profile is actually open, so you can send me a message and I'll always be a resource to talk to as well. It's just important, like now I know I got a new radio host I can listen to on the way to work too, on the way home from work and stuff like that. So, it's all about connecting and understanding and finding new resources, right? Like Amarpreet said, like I wouldn't have met you guys if I wasn't a part of this chat, right? So, now when I listen to you on the radio, I know I can relate. I know somebody that I can relate to.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah, and I gotta give respect to both of you guys for coming on. I know that talking about mental health is a huge stigma, especially within the male population. So the fact that you guys are out here and talking about it, kudos to you guys, because I know that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, and we need to continue doing it.
For sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thank you very much for everybody who for sharing your testimonies, and also the reality that you live in. To add on to what he said again, like I said it earlier, but follow the Black Lens on Instagram. Because it's important. Like we actually our goal on the Black Lens is to counteract the stereotypical images that are promoted in popular mainstream media about Black people. So we use images that promote Black people graduating, Black people celebrating united families, all that kind of stuff that we don't really get to see. Yeah. And also I do a lot of advocacy for mental health awareness in our community. So Don IET, y'all already know what it is. Come and check it out.
Yeah. And I'm about to go home and eat some oxtail.
So many things.
That's why we're eating oxtail. That's what it is, okay? Yeah, and it smells like oxtail.
With a lot of spice.
With a lot of spice, yeah.
Yeah, I already know. That.
Welcome to Consciously Black.